Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Madden Benz Unfiltered, the Planet Hoth edition, as is the case in Buffalo, New York, as we get set for a playoff game that still is yet to be played. We thought we'd be reviewing Bills and Steelers. Instead, we're previewing it because of the weather, and we're brought to you by Rush to Crush Cancer. It's more than a bike ride, it's a mission. Join us Sunday, May the 19th, for Rush to Crush the Cancer Bike Ride. Whether you're a cycling enthusiast, just love the mission, or you want to be the part of the group, you have plenty of opportunity to be a part of it. We've got a course for you. We've got all sorts of abilities for you to sign up and take different paths on the Rush to Crush. Go to rushtocrushcancer.org, rushtocrushcancer.org, and help us in the fight against cancer. All proceeds stay right here in the Pittsburgh area, so join the ride. I know it feels funny to think about a bike ride in May right now with everything we're looking at outside, let alone what we're seeing online on Twitter. In Buffalo, people are tweeting out photos and videos of trying to clear the stadium so people can get in. Whoever's there is going to have to sit on banks of snow, basically, because they're just shoveling the aisles into where you sit. So I don't know, Mark, if the home field advantage that Buffalo was hoping to get is going to be real once it starts anyway, because I'm sure people will stay away. They'll get some fans there, but I know they've tried like hell to get the game played in Buffalo, and it's going to happen. I do think that the Steelers playing in a road environment, though, will be mitigated, and I still think that the snow and the bad weather itself is going to keep this game close.
Tim, this was like a Pat McAfee show opening. I feel like A.J. Hawk. You made me stare into the camera like a dummy for 3 minutes. Yeah, there's no place to shovel the snow. That's one thing that gets overlooked in situations like I have in Buffalo. I think it's going to be a mistake to have played this game there. I think it should have been moved the minute the likelihood of extreme weather became known on when was it, Wednesday or Thursday. I think the first responsibility is to make sure the game gets played like a real game. I'm not so sure today's game will be anything like a real game.
I don't. I think the weather is still going to be the story. I think it's going to dilute what the Bills can do. I think it's part of the reason why the Steelers are going to cover. I don't think the Steelers are going to win. I think it'll be an excuse for either side emerging from this game. But I think, really, Mark, the only team that should be making excuses is Buffalo if they lose. The Steelers aren't supposed to win this game anyway.
I think the Steelers are going to win because that's the only way this whole convoluted story makes sense, Tim. But I think it's going to be just a horrible game. I think you're right. I think whatever team loses will use this as an excuse, whether it be subtly or otherwise. They should have moved the game. I mean, I can't get past that. They should have absolutely moved the game.
You mentioned that you think every NFL team should have a dome or at least a retractable roof.
Or like Stephen King, under the dome.
So when the Steelers eventually move out of Acrisure Stadium, what was Heinz Field, and they put the new stadium in, Cranberry or Bridgeville or whatever, Washington County somewhere, there will be a retractable roof on it. You think there should be a retractable roof on it?
I think that every team in the league, Tim, should have a retractable roof or an indoor stadium. I think every game should be played in conditions that are pristine as possible, as befits an industry that's worth hundreds of billions of dollars at this point and becoming more valuable every day. The romance of outdoor football is long since dead. It's not 1967. People romanticize about the Ice Bowl, which was the NFL championship game that year in 67, whatever it was on the field, 25 below. The whistles were sticking to the referee's lips. They had to officiate the game using hand signals. The signal plays were dead. Okay, I'm sure looking back, boy, what a great story. But on the day, every single person inside Lambeau Field in Green Bay would have rather the game been indoors. It's about the game, not about romance after the fact.
So what do you do in that situation then? You just leave it up to each referee crew on a given day whether or not they close the dome, or do you have like league mandated rules that say below a certain temperature, above a certain wind speed, you close the dome? How do you do it?
Well, I haven't thought it through that much, Tim, because it's never going to happen.
Okay. Well, I mean, there are stadiums. There's one of them. They are building a new stadium. If ever there was a place where this should be considered, it is there for the reasons we've seen, the reasons that we saw last year.
And they're not going to, are they?
No, they're not. I think they go with the romance.
Then that's fine, but then move their playoff games if anything like this ever beckons again. And you got the governor of New York involved. What's it to her? I mean, aside from the revenue, but I mean, it's a league. The NFL is much more powerful than the governor of New York.
Last year, the Bills actually.
I know she can declare a state of emergency, and then Goodell should have proclaimed a state of moving the game to Detroit because she can't stop that.
Well, they wouldn't have been able to play in Detroit because Detroit played its own game. But Indy, yeah, I could see that, or Atlanta, or something else. Yes.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're right. Detroit was at home. And by the way, we'll be at home again. What a great story.
Yeah, we can get to that. I do want to get to a couple other points about the Steelers game. And what you said, you think the Steelers are going to win. Is part of that because Buffalo played in a game like this last year at home against Cincinnati, and they were the lesser team? Cincinnati
part
actually.
Of it because it's just a goofy season. And this is going to be a goofy game. And I think the goofier the two teams is more likely to win. And that's the Steelers. By the way, Tim, I was watching Get Up on ESPN before I joined the show here. It is amazing. It never stops. It was a sub panel, with all those guys taking today off. But all they're talking about is, well, if Buffalo loses, you got to fire McDermott. Dallas lost, you got to fire McCarthy. Where's Harbaugh going to go? Where's Belichick going to go? But then the talk turns to Steelers. Well, the only reason they're there is because of Mike Tomlin. And the only reason they have a chance is because of Mike Tomlin. This isn't about their quarterback. It's about Tomlin thinking of something that could win the game today. Meantime, the only story this year is Mason Rudolph. He's the only reason they're in the playoffs, and it took Tomlin 16 games to figure out who his best quarterback was. And only then because of extreme circumstance.
Let's remember that a lot of those national types finally did turn to the side of saying that the Steelers might need to make a coaching change after they lost that third in a row.
Not now that they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, I know that they're erasing everything that they said before. They're not paying attention to their own narrative, but they fell into the trap with Tomlin that they're doing right now with all the other coaches. They know what moves the needle. It's talking about quarterbacks. It's talking about the coach, and it's oversimplifying the entire game, and they do it every day.
And also, Tim, and this is as far as I can go, there's a narrative there that dares not speak its name.
I think if you look at the Steelers losing or winning today, it doesn't change the narrative about where they are big picture moving into next year, because I don't think they've decided yet in their mind that Mason Rudolph should be the quarterback next year. In fact, I think
quite the opposite. Yeah. I think they decided that Kenny Pickett is definitely going to be the quarterback.
I think that's why I think there's more merit to this whole depth chart conversation than anybody wants to give credence to. And the reason for that is if it was
it doesn't matter, fat ass. Those depth charts don't matter, fat ass. And then the coach, well, we're worried about the division of duty. We're not worried about what a piece of paper says. I mean, come on, give me a break. It's just ridiculous.
If it didn't matter, then they'd make the change because they did it once already. They did it last summer.
Tim, can you give me one good reason to not update the depth chart? Because I can't come up with one.
Yeah, it's an oversight. And when it was pointed out to them, they could fix it. But they decided not to fix it, and now they're just digging their heels in.
I don't believe it's an oversight. I think it's a statement. That statement,
I tend to agree.
That statement corresponds to a gesture I'm currently making with my right hand.
Well, let's see what Mason Rudolph can do with his right hand in the snow and everything else. Because actually, you know what? That is a tactical thing that has to come up with this, Mark. They have been better in part because Mason Rudolph has pushed the football down the field, and they're not going to be able to do that as well today.
No question, but I trust Mason Rudolph more in a situation like today than I would Kenny Pickett. I think Kenny Pickett would be more likely to panic and figuratively and literally drop the ball. Not that Mason Rudolph's immune to that after all of 3 games started this year, but I think it's highly less likely. I think he feels like he's playing with house money, don't you?
I know the theory that he's playing with nothing to lose. I don't buy that. I think he's playing like a guy with everything to gain, and that's a good thing because if he has to look at it that way. I think
there's elements of both, Tim.
I think when he took the job over, if you said he had nothing to lose, that's not true because he had an entire career to lose. You know, if he goes in that game against Cincinnati and stinks and they have to go back to Mitch Trubisky again, then what? He's going to get a job next year? He didn't have a job this year, so he had a lot to lose.
Yeah, but I think after he won the first 2 starts, that guaranteed his place in the league for next year, if not with the Steelers, and then it did become a situation of house money.
Maybe now. Yeah, maybe now. But,
Especially now, right now. I mean, if he sucks at Buffalo, the weather's his excuse. He played great up till now. He can only do good today.
Is it kind of a situation like we see in Cleveland, though, Mark, where it's clear? I mean, Deshaun Watson was established. He's got a lot more money. There's more reasons to go back to him. But, is it going to be, okay, Mason, thanks for what you did, and then they'll just turn him loose to free agency and let themselves be outbid for him? Is that a possibility? I think it is.
Let themselves be outbid for him?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to keep him, but yada, yada.
Yeah, you do the Pittsburgh Pirate thing. You do what the team down the parking lot says. Oh, well, we really wanted that guy, but gosh, the Astros just paid so much money.
We almost got Ohtani, but So, no, I don't think they're going to want to bring Rudolph back, because if they do, the minute Pickett struggles, and he will, the fans will clamor for Rudolph. I think keeping Rudolph starts a dynamic that could wind up with Pickett as the bad guy that they want to avoid, for all costs.
Well, I think that's part of the reason the depth chart is what it is, because they're acclimating people to get used to the idea of Pickett being the starter again in May.
Which is so dumb. For an organization and the coach who always says they just look at the next game, it is just so phony and capricious.
All right, so we want to hear from you, Steelers fans. Get your comments in about the game, about the weather, about the postponement, whether or not you thought that it was legitimate, valid. I mean, I know there's a lot of Steelers fans out there who feel like this is some sort of conspiracy theory against the Steelers to help the Bills.
There was no way to play the game yesterday at Buffalo. Absolutely no way. And they probably shouldn't play the game today. And until they kick off, Tim, I'm not convinced they will.
And by the way, we did see the schedule come out for next week, and let's put it this way. It is basically whoever wins today gets the latest slot next week. They play 6:30 on Sunday. But the point still is, even if this was sort of a conspiracy theory that you think was cooked up against the Steelers, if the Bills advance, they're still going on a short week into next week against Kansas City.
Well, yeah. I mean, pushing the game back to Monday, I'm not outraged by. It just shouldn't be there. They should have not taken, Tim, everybody says Tuesday was and maybe is still in play, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if they can't figure out a way to play for some reason or another today, if they can't get this.
You can't ask teams to play a playoff game on a Tuesday, then the winner plays the next Sunday. You can't ask them that, but they're going to. They have, if this game would have got moved to Tuesday, and it still could, they are violating the fairness of the playoffs.
Yeah, and it violates the fairness of the playoffs to the next week as well, because if you play on a Tuesday, then you have to have either Baltimore or Kansas City, depending on who wins this game, play on a Monday before the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, it's rotten. They screwed it up, but they're too big to fail.
Yes, and we are seeing evidence of that more and more with the NFL. Now, let's get to the NFL, because you said you wanted to get to the Cowboys and their loss. Let's get to the Chiefs, too, and their win. And you want to talk about conspiracy theories. My God, every time Kansas City gets a call now, go on Twitter, and it's all, they just want to keep Taylor Swift on television.
They do want to keep Taylor Swift on television. I'm not saying that's why calls favor the Chiefs, but they are in lockstep with her being the Chiefs and, by extension, the NFL's most famous fan.
I put a tweet out there of that helmet that exploded, or the paint chip that came off of Patrick Mahomes' helmet when he lowered his head into that Miami defensive back, and I made a joke about it. Hey, do you think Jaylen Warren believes that now Patrick Mahomes is going to get fined? And I haven't had a tweet in my life that's gotten that much traction. Retweets and favorites, because everybody's thinking that way. Everybody's looking at the Chiefs right now and saying, they're the new Patriots. They're the new NFL darling.
They are. I mean, I'm not saying that affects the calls or the outcomes, but the NFL is very happy with the additional fans, the additional eyes that Taylor Swift is drawing. However, I pointedly did not watch the Kansas City-Miami game. Even though I have Peacock, I didn't like that it was on pay TV. And I didn't want to go through Swiftomania. I'm just not interested. Now, for every guy like me who won't watch, there's 10 new fans who will. So I understand, but I'm not going to play ball.
And I think that what the NFL does, by so blatantly prioritizing marketing is it does plant that seed into the fans' minds, whether it's because of gambling, whether it's because of TV ratings, streaming platforms. More and more, Mark, people just feel like the game is a show. It's a TV show.
That's not because of Taylor Swift, Tim. That's because the game is now in the thrall of the gambling companies, with sponsorship, with constant mentions, with the line being always said when that used to be taboo, Tim, you'll recall. I mean, Musburger and Phyllis George and Jimmy the Greek,
they were
the first to do that, and they would tiptoe around it, and they got lambasted for it. And now everything's the spread, the over-under, the prop bets. They are in absolute thrall to gambling. And that will lead people to talk, even if their talk is a bunch of crap.
How'd you feel about the Cowboys getting smoked by Green Bay?
That was great. That was great. You know what the best part about it, Tim? It embarrasses Aaron Rodgers. It's like, okay, we got that crazy old bastard out of here with all his cronies and immediately became a lot better. We got free of his horse manure and immediately became a lot better. And, Tim, that's undeniable. Because if he had stayed there, it would have been the same old crap.
You pointed out in the podcast, it's something that doesn't necessarily look great for Pickett either, in the sense that Love is already on a better trajectory than he is. And he's
younger.
Yeah, I don't know how vast the age difference is, but I just feel like he's been around
I know how
forever.
vast the performance difference is.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he was really good.
Kenny Pickett stinks. People around here just don't want to even consider that. He absolutely stinks. And it'll be proven again and again, and as long as it has to be proven until they move on.
You know what I think the biggest matchup for the Steelers today, Mark, is how they run inside with Najee against the Bills interior. Like, Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver, they're good defensive linemen. If the Steelers win up front with like Cole, who's not been great at center, but the two guards who have been pretty good, that's how they win. They ride Najee as the main guy, and he gets about 130 to 150 yards, something like that. That's how they win.
Remember that game? Who was it, Tim, a couple years ago? It was in extreme weather, and the Patriots only threw 3 passes.
Yeah, it was against the Bills. It was Mac Jones.
Was that a playoff game?
No, I think that was a Monday night game, wasn't it? Or a Thursday night game?
That's the kind of game the Steelers need to play. But the score needs to allow for that. They need to score first.
All right, let's get to the Penguins, Mark, and their decision to move up their game because of the Steelers game. Is that something you endorse? Is that something you would have done?
I do endorse it because even though I didn't get my chili bar at the canceled viewing party yesterday at Celebrations in Imperial, this does mean the Penguins pregame meal will be scrambled eggs and bacon, which is good. And I also, my show's preempted today too. I could have taken off because it's MLK Day. I could have done my annual I Have a Dream speech. But now I have no choice because, like the Penguin broadcast, the pregame, the game, the postgame, they need something I show. And that's good because I doubt if anybody would have been listening during the Steelers game.
Yeah, I'm going down to do a Monday afternoon pregame show at 12:30. It feels like COVID all over again with the way this thing is being moved around. But, you could have done a postgame.
One last thing I want to make clear about the Penguins, about the Steelers, Tim. If the Steelers lose today, okay, it's just another season stuck in the mushy middle. They're not close to anything. They will not have proven anything. They will just maintain Tomlin's meaningless streak and got nowhere closer to winning a Super Bowl or making a Super Bowl or winning a playoff game.
Yeah, and we talked about this a bit on the DV pregame or the morning show today, which everything's a pregame show today over there. But I mean, today on the morning show, we talked about.
Did Randy show up today?
Yeah,
Randy worked on a holiday.
Well, I mean, they planned for this to be a Monday where they were going to work because it was a Monday after a playoff game, so they were going to be there anyway. Wow,
I'm impressed, Randy. Way to go.
So they were talking about, and Pursuta brought up the point about maybe the bigger part of the sin of the drought of not having 7 straight years without a playoff victory. Like the fact that it happened in the early stages of that drought, that it was the end stages of Roethlisberger is the biggest deal. Because like in the 80s, we're getting to the 80s now, like where we don't know who the quarterback is.
Oh, they should have done better with Roethlisberger at the end, especially before he blew out his elbow.
Yeah.
Or they should have laid the groundwork for post-Roethlisberger. But they never laid the groundwork for post-anything. The only thing that matters to them is the next game. And that's how you get stuck in the mushy middle.
Yeah, like the 80s sort of trickled out of the 70s. And, they still made the playoffs here and there in the early 80s. And then you had the
Well,
drought.
the difference was then, Tim, they still won a playoff game here and there.
Yeah, they popped for a playoff game once at least every 5 years. The previous long drought was only 5 years.
I wrote a column about this. Cowher had a much better career than Tomlin has. Just a much better career. And that's because of the playoff record. Tomlin's teams did much better in the playoffs. And he finished under 500 3 years. But in one of those years, they were able to draft Roethlisberger because of it. People just don't see the value of having bad years here. If you told these idiots out there, and you are all idiots, if you told these idiots out there they could finish 9-8 in perpetuity, they would take it because always in it, important games, Tomlin, no losing seasons.
Oh, the Penguins going to make the playoffs?
No. I mean, I hope. But, their power play in overtime is killing them.
Yeah, they're not getting enough loser. Well, they're getting too many loser points. They're not getting any second points. I think it's what.
Well, and the problem is the loser points that other teams get clog up the standings. As I mentioned in my blog, which I don't know if it's been posted yet because after all, it is a holiday. They have gone 9-3-3 in the last month, little over a month. Okay. When that streak started, they were 6 points out of a playoff berth. Now they're only 2 points out, but still, that's like making up no ground. So, and that's because of the loser point. When so many games are worth 3 points and not 2, it's just insane.
Yeah, and like Sid said in the game against Vancouver where they made the big comeback, he kind of made the comment, well, it would have been nice if the power play had popped one in there and then maybe you don't go to overtime. Yeah, maybe. But
they're not. You know what, though? They've lost their right to kind of muse like that because they don't do anything to change it.
And they are the power play. Like we kind of act like the power play is a separate entity than those who are on it.
The only thing they've changed on the power play is they move Sid up high, but on the wrong side.
Because Malkin is still on the other side.
Because God forbid Gino should ever know an unpleasant moment not play exactly where and how he wants to play. In overtime, where Gino's killing the team. He's killing them. You know what the ironic part is, Tim? He's still decent 5-on-5.
Yes, 5-on-5 numbers are good. Yeah.
I mean, he's slow, but he's decent. But he's killing them on the power play. He's killing them 3-on-3. You know who else is killing them on the power play? It's Carlson.
What were you saying? He's the master of the fake slap pass? Is that
No, the shot pass.
The shot pass, yeah.
The shot pass that leads to nothing.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And when he cryptically said
after
the game,
I don't necessarily blame him, Tim. If I was Eric Carlson, I would say, listen, the power play's mine now. We're going to do what I say.
Well, when he cryptically said after the loss in overtime against Carolina, I have my ideas as what's going wrong with the 3-on-3. Say it then. Speak it into existence. Let's hear it.
Nobody wants to step on any toes in that entire organization. Nobody. And like I said in my column, to make an omelet, you got to break eggs. And right now their power play looks like the food fight scene from Animal House.
Let's get to some comments. Sean says, I wonder if Belichick will reunite with Josh McDaniels somewhere. I don't think it matters unless they're reuniting with a 35-year-old Tom Brady, and that's just not going to happen.
I think any team who hires Belichick will have made a mistake and will realize it almost immediately.
Eric says you could hear the whole country erupt in celebration after what happened to the Cowboys last night. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of schadenfreude going on with the Cowboys getting smoked by Green Bay. No doubt about it.
You know what the problem with the Cowboys is? The Cowboys are the Toronto Maple Leafs of the NFL.
I thought the same thing. In fact, I regret not phrasing it to you that way because I felt exactly the same way. That's what that franchise is.
Because they have more resources than anybody, and they still can't win. And why is that? It's because losing is in their DNA. The minute things go wrong, they expect them to go even more wrong.
Frank says, remember Matt Flynn? He had one great game at the end of the year for Green Bay and parlayed it into a big contract with Seattle and basically disappeared. Yeah, you get that sort of interim coach effect, especially in college football. You get that with backup quarterbacks who peak late in seasons. Yes, I see that. I mean, but I think Mason Rudolph's better than Matt Flynn. And I think at least he got himself a job as a backup somewhere, maybe here, maybe somewhere else.
Yeah, no question. And I think Matt Flynn was better than Kenny Pickett.
Frank says, I read that even in Buffalo, they had a dome. The game would not have been played on Sunday. Yeah, because it wasn't about just the dome. It was about getting there. It was about the traffic in and around the
If
stadium.
there was a dome, there would have been no doubt about the game today, and it would have been played in better conditions.
Richard says, if another team offers Rudolph a similar contract to the Steelers, he would be dumb to stay, as he will never get a real shot, as they are completely invested in Pickett no matter what.
Okay, Richard's right, mostly. But if the best offer for money is from the Steelers, if they give him like Trubisky money, he should say to himself, you know what? Pickett really stinks. I've seen it up close. He's awful. And if I stick around, eventually he'll have to get benched or he'll get hurt in air quotes, and then I'll keep it because they can't screw me twice. Even though they probably could, they probably wouldn't.
And Mark, even though I'm someone who is thinking that he probably goes somewhere else next year, wherever he does go, they're going to draft a quarterback too. They're going to create a Pickett situation wherever he goes. If not this year, the next. Like, he's not going to get a Deshaun Watson starting quarterback contract. He's going to get a bridge deal of some sort.
What if he did get a Deshaun Watson quarterback contract? By the way, Tim, one thing I want to know with the Belichick. Here, you know why Belichick would be a bad hire? Same reason that Vrabel would be a bad hire. Okay, anywhere. Okay? Colin Cowherd says this all the time. You don't hire defensive head coaches in this era. It just doesn't work. They don't know what to do when the offense goes bad or the quarterback gets hurt. And all that matters now is offense and quarterback.
Yeah, get an offensive guy, and then you find yourself a really good defensive coordinator like a pitching coach. You know what I mean? Like, you get somebody like a designated. You don't have
what
to
was
be.
Dan Campbell's background, Tim, in Detroit?
He was a tight end. He was the tight ends coach, and I think he was the special teams coach. I don't know if he ever got to.
So he is, however, nominally an offensive coach.
Yeah, he played tight end. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he, even though he has the demeanor of a defensive coach, he gets it.
Richard says, while the loser point the last two games was good, the horrendous power play losing them both games is not. That was the follow-up that he had.
Yeah, he's right. I mean, guilty as charged.
Robert says, didn't the Steelers play 3 games in weeks during COVID? They played at least 2. Yeah, I think they played at least 2. I think
this isn't COVID. Okay, we have options now.
Yeah, and the other thing about COVID is, like, that was a lousy turn of events too. It wasn't something that you wanted to do. I mean, playing on a Wednesday.
I can't stress enough that the minute that the high probability of extreme weather became known Wednesday, the game should have been moved to a dome stadium, period.
Josh says, for a long time, I hope Crosby would be a one-team guy like Mario before him, but with the state of the team the way that it is, I want to see Dubas rebuild the team to a winner again, or at least get a legit playoff contender, whatever it takes at this point.
Well, they won't do a total rebuild, Tim. I think they would like, for example, Letang and Crosby for sure to stay till the end of their contracts. But because here's the thing. People say, oh, you can't trade Jake. He's one of your best players. Okay, here's a Jake trade scenario. You get a first and a second for him, right? And if you trade him a contender, they won't be real high picks, but you're getting a first and a second. Then you have his cap space to use too.
Right. Yeah. And
you're not going to get an equivalency for that cap space, but you'll get a real good player.
Yeah, and it's going to go down. I think when we look back on all this, especially since people never want to admit that keeping the core together was a move that was never going to reap a Stanley Cup.
Keeping Malkin was a big mistake, and I think anybody who's objective would admit that now. It was a big mistake.
Yeah, I think the narrative is going to turn into the bigger mistake was extending Rust, extending Raquel to be support around the core. Because
what they should have done there was save some money for Gensel if they felt that way.
That's exactly what they should have done. Yes. And it wasn't that hard to project, Mark. It was only a year out.
Right now. Can we win right now? And they weren't going to win right now. And they're still not.
Most importantly, before we go, Mark, you brought it up before. Somebody asked here if you're going to be doing Steelers play-by-play like you do Liverpool play-by-play, but you're not on today because actual play-by-play of the Penguins will be on in your place since they moved the game.
And I'll be at the Penguin game, too. I'm going to go. So
you're going to go, and will you demand a chili recipe, a chili bar at the Penguins game moving forward now?
No, I'm grateful for the scrambled eggs and bacon. I like a breakfast thing at the and they have pork loin, too, Tim. They've doubled down. It's
donuts. They usually have donuts, too, don't they?
Yeah, I'm trying to stay away from that. I'm trying to go the protein route. So
Pastries are the devil.
Yeah, they are. They're the worst. Like, you know what else is the worst? We're at the iHeartMedia headquarters. They have that big dish full of mini candy bars all the time. That is the devil.
It's amazing how much those little Twix will put on your hips if you keep going by the candy dish. That's for sure.
Well, it's worse for me, Tim, because I'll settle for anything.
But I agree with your monologue about apples, though. Your apple monologue was spot on. You need if you get a good, perfect, crisp apple, it's as good as you can get for a snack.
They have apples there occasionally, too.
Yes, they have golden delicious. What do they have there? Fuji apples or something like that?
They're like a brand name apple. They're a gourmet apple.
Yeah, they're Honey Crisp apples. That's right.
They're really good.
Yeah, that's right. Kanzi apples or Honey Crisp.
You know what you got to do with them, too? You got to take them and wash them under cold water for like 90 seconds. Really cold water, because it accentuates the crispness and the taste.
See, that's what we're really here for. You think we're here for sports. We're here for chili, scrambled eggs, and apples. And
Damn, I couldn't care less about this game today. I don't know what that says about me or where I'm going, but I couldn't care less.
Brought to you by Rush to Crush Cancer. It's more than a ride. It's a mission. Join us May 19th for the Rush.
By the way, Tim, one more thing.
Yes.
And I said this on the podcast. You know, it was a disturbing image, and I didn't see it live, which is why I don't regret not watching the game. Taylor Swift peering through that frosted window, wearing that puffy Travis Kelce jacket.
Yes.
Reminding me of the Heat Miser. Or maybe the Wicked Witch of the West. I hope maybe today she drops a house on Josh Allen.
She was lording a spell over the referees to make calls in favor of Patrick Mahomes. That's what she was doing.
Tim, I do not find her attractive, and I'm sure that makes us even.
Rush to Crush Cancer. It's more than a ride. It's a mission. Join us May 19th for the Rush to Crush Cancer bike ride. Register, go to rushtocrushcancer.org and help us in the fight against cancer. Join the ride. We'll talk to you next week for Madden Benz Unfiltered. Maybe we're talking about another playoff game, or maybe we're not.
I'll tell you, I'll be talking from fabulous Las Vegas is where I'll be talking from.
All right, so Mark's going to be in Vegas.
And I'll be watching that 6:30 game in Baltimore at 3:30 Pacific time at the Resorts World Sportsbook.
We're back with you next week, brought to you by Rush to Crush Cancer.